Picture this for a second. One camera is rolling in Washington. Donald Trump is standing in front of reporters, shrugging, dismissive, saying Canada doesn't matter to him. He waves off trade deals, scoffs at the idea that the United States needs anything north of the border. Cut the camera. Now switch scenes. Another plane is touching down halfway across the world. In Beijing. Red carpets rolled out. Honor guards standing at attention. Senior Chinese officials waiting on the tarmac. Flashbulbs popping. This is not just any visitor. This is the Canadian Prime Minister, Mark Carney, arriving for a full state-level welcome, personally invited by President Xi Jinping. 2 images. 2 realities. And if you think Donald Trump wasn't watching that second image very, very closely, you're not paying attention. Ask yourself this. When was the last time Canada found itself at the center of a global power shift like this? When was the last time a Canadian Prime Minister landed in China to this level of ceremony, this level of symbolism, this level of strategic intent? 8 years. 8 years since the last Canadian Prime Minister set foot in China on an official visit. And this one wasn't quiet. It wasn't routine. It wasn't procedural. Beijing didn't just receive Mark Carney. Beijing elevated him. And that detail changes everything. Because this wasn't about politeness. It wasn't about optics for domestic audiences. It was Beijing sending a message. A message to Ottawa, yes. But more importantly, a message to Washington. And Donald Trump heard it loud and clear. This visit came with language we don't hear by accident. State-level treatment. Strategic reset. New chapter in Canada-China relations. These aren't throwaway phrases. These are diplomatic signals. And they only get used when a country sees real strategic value on the other side of the table. China sees that value in Mark Carney. And the reason why should make Donald Trump deeply uncomfortable. Because Carney represents something Trump no longer does. Predictability. Stability. Respect for agreements. A leader who understands trade-offs instead of governing by threat and impulse. In a world that is actively trying to reduce its exposure to US volatility, that matters more than ever. Countries are tired of waking up to tariffs announced on social media. They are tired of deals being questioned one day and discarded the next. They want partners they can plan with, build with, rely on. And that's exactly the image Carney projects. Almost on cue, Trump lashed out.
No real advantage to us. It's irrelevant to me. Canada would love it. Canada wants it. They need it. Because we don't need Canada product. That's the thing. I want to be a nice person, but we don't need... I want to build the cars here, not in Canada. We used to build cars in Canada. Now, the Canada cars, the Canadians are moving here to build cars. Same thing with Mexico. Same thing with Japan. Japan's paid us billions and billions of dollars for the privilege of making cars here and selling cars.
So, when reporters asked him about CUSMA, the USMCA, he waved it off like it was nothing. Said Canada needs it, the United States doesn't. Claimed America doesn't need Canadian-made cars. Insisted everything should be built in the United States. Strong words. Loud words. But here's the key point you need to understand. That wasn't strength. That was anxiety. Because when Donald Trump says, "It doesn't matter to me," history tells us it usually matters a lot. This wasn't about cars. It wasn't about trade text. It wasn't even really about Canada. It was about control. And control slipping away. For years, Trump's leverage over Canada rested on one central assumption. That Canada had nowhere else to go. That if Washington squeezed hard enough on autos, tariffs, or trade threats, Ottawa would eventually bend. Why? Because the US market was simply too dominant to replace. Too big. Too close. Too essential. That assumption shaped Trump's entire approach to Canada. Pressure works when the other side is trapped. But that world is ending. And Mark Carney is dismantling that assumption in real time. Canada is no longer operating from fear or dependency. Europe has re-engaged. Asian markets are opening. Trade corridors are widening. And now China, the world's second-largest economy, isn't just talking to Canada behind closed doors. It's welcoming its Prime Minister at the highest possible level. That alone changes the balance of power. Think about this carefully. Pressure only works when there are no alternatives. Threats only work when the target is isolated. Trump understands this instinctively, even if he doesn't say it out loud. That's why his tone has shifted from confidence to irritation. When he says Canada needs the deal more than the US, he's reacting to the loss of leverage. When he dismisses Canadian manufacturing, he's signaling frustration that Canada is no longer trapped inside a single economic corridor. And this is where things get really interesting. Carney isn't cutting ties with the United States. That would be reckless. Instead, he's doing something far more dangerous to Trump's strategy. He's making Canada optional. Optional to pressure. Optional to coercion. Optional to threats. And once a country reaches that point, intimidation stops working. Let that sink in for a moment. Because this is where the story starts to get genuinely dangerous for Donald Trump. If the United States wants to rip auto manufacturing out of Canada, Carney has options. Real options. Not theoretical ones. Not talking points. Actual, tangible alternatives. China isn't just interested in selling electric vehicles into foreign markets. That era is already shifting. What China wants now is production. Factories. Supply chains. Battery infrastructure. Long-term footholds. And Canada, with its skilled workforce, critical minerals, stable institutions, and proximity to the US market, is extremely attractive. Imagine this scenario. Chinese EV manufacturers build factories in Canada. Battery plants. Assembly lines. Charging infrastructure. Tens of thousands of Canadian jobs. Lower cost, high-quality EVs for Canadian consumers. Canada becomes a global EV manufacturing hub. And here's the part Trump understands perfectly, even if he never admits it publicly. Those EVs would be built right next to the US border. Right next to it. Chinese EVs manufactured in Canada would compete directly with US vehicles on price, technology, and scale. And that would be devastating for the American auto industry, especially as it struggles to keep up globally. This isn't speculation. This is the future of global manufacturing. And Trump knows it. That's why he lashes out. Not because Canada is weak, but because Canada is no longer dependent. At the same time, Carney's team is pushing hard on agriculture. And this is where the leverage shift becomes even more concrete. Canola. Seafood. Pork. Entire sectors that have been caught in the crossfire of trade retaliation for years. Canadian farmers have paid the price. Real losses. Real uncertainty. For a long time, Ottawa had very little room to maneuver. When China retaliated, Canada felt it immediately. When Washington pressured, Canada absorbed the shock. That is changing. China knows Canada now has options. And Canada knows it no longer has to negotiate from a position of urgency or fear. Even incremental movement on canola sends a powerful signal. It tells markets that trade retaliation isn't permanent. It tells farmers that diversification works. It tells negotiators that patience can pay off. For Beijing, stabilizing agricultural trade with Canada makes economic sense. For Ottawa, it proves a much bigger point. Canada can push back without escalating. Canada can absorb pressure without folding. Canada can wait. And for Trump, it's another reminder that Canada is no longer boxed in economically or politically. This is why this moment is different from anything we've seen before. This visit isn't about choosing sides between Washington and Beijing. That framing is outdated. It's about ending vulnerability. For too long, Canada's economy has been exposed to the political mood swings of one country. When pressure came, there were limited alternatives. And Trump exploited that reality relentlessly. Carney is changing that equation. He's not replacing the United States. He's making sure Canada is never hostage to any single partner again. That's why Europe matters. That's why Asia matters. That's why China matters. Diversification isn't optional anymore. It's essential. Here's the reality many people still underestimate. A country with options negotiates calmly. A country with options resists pressure. A country with options can say no when it needs to. That is the real purpose of this visit. Not symbolism. Not spectacle. Protection. And that's exactly why Donald Trump is so unsettled by it.
Hello everyone, it is good to see you here on the ground in Beijing. I want to take a moment right off the top to stress the magnitude of this visit. The first visit to China by a Canadian Prime Minister since 2017. Prime Minister Carney received an explicit invitation from President Xi to come to China after conversations with Premier Li and President Xi in the fall of 2025.
Trump can stand at a podium and say Canada doesn't matter. He can dismiss trade relationships. He can mock manufacturing north of the border. But the world is watching something very different unfold. A Canadian Prime Minister welcomed at the highest level in Beijing. A US President lashing out from the sidelines. And a global economy quietly adjusting to a new reality. Canada is no longer waiting. It's no longer trapped. And it's no longer moving at Washington's pace. Under Mark Carney, Canada is moving forward deliberately, confidently, and fast. It's building options. It's reducing vulnerability. It's reshaping how power works in North American trade. And no amount of pressure from Donald Trump is going to stop that. So here's the question I want to leave you with. If Canada can do this, if it can reduce dependence, diversify partnerships, and regain leverage, what does that mean for the rest of the world that has been living under US economic pressure for decades? And what happens next when intimidation no longer works? That's the real story. And we are just at the beginning. If you want clear, no-nonsense analysis at a moment when global politics is shifting fast, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Is Canada playing this exactly right, or is this a risky gamble? Let's talk about it.